everyone, Hammad here. Welcome to my channel, Cloud with Hammad, DIY Cloud Learning to Inspire. For today, our cloud series with AWS, I will be working with Amazon Elastic Kubernetes Services. In this lab, I will work with AWS command line interface and the console. I will use command line utility like EKSCTL and KUBECTL to launch EKS Cluster. I will provision Kubernetes deployment running pod instances of Nginx images. In the end, I will also create a load balancer service to expose Nginx application over the internet. For the past few months, I have developed passion for Kubernetes, because of which I made several videos on Kubernetes. So I highly encourage you to go and view those videos, like discussing Kubernetes architecture, what is Kubernetes, step-by-step guide to install Kubernetes nodes or cluster using Ubuntu, deep dive guide installing Kubernetes nodes using Microsoft Azure Kubernetes services, and lastly, a guide to install Kubernetes dashboard to view nodes and pods for performance. But before we get into our lab, if you're new to my channel, please subscribe, like, and share with friends. I would really appreciate that. Now, without further ado, let's go to our notes. All right, guys, so first thing first, let's quickly discuss the agenda. As we have already know that Elastic Kubernetes Services, which is EKS, is a fully managed Kubernetes services for AWS. Our exercise will consist of, we'll first create an IAM user. We'll give them a name of K8 admin, and then we'll install, we'll provision an EC2 instance in our dashboard, and then also log into EC2 machine and upgrade our CLI to version 2. And then we'll install EKSCTL, which is a command line utility. Also, we'll then install KUBECTL, which is Kubernetes utility. All the links are here. I'm going to use these links to log in to upgrade and use the commands over there. I will leave the link into the video as well. YouTube video. And then over here, the whole architecture is once we deploy the EC2 machine, EKS will have a control panel, which is a master controller, and then we'll have T2 machines that will be running as like EC2 machines. And then we'll do a deployment, which will have Nginx images, we'll have pods, and then we'll use a load balancer to manage workload between the pods through the deployment. This is pretty much the same thing, a little bit more clear. This is a Kubernetes server, which is the control panel, and then EKS cluster. It will have worker nodes. So EKS cluster will, the user will basically set up a command like create deployment, and then once he hit deployment, the Kubernetes servers will message EKS, and EKS will pass the job to different worker node, which is in different availability zone. This is on the private subnet. We'll be using CloudFormation to deploy these nodes. I will show you in the process as well. So let's get to our control panel. All right, so I'm already logged into my console. As you can see, I am logged in to Virginia region, and then I have a console over here. First thing first, as we discussed, we will provision IAM. So we'll create an account by just typing in IAM. Once I get here, I will click on IAM so that it loads the profile. You just have to bear with me, a little slow today. And then click user over here. I will create a user, and I would say K8 admin, and we will give them a programmatic access, enable an access key ID and secret access key for AWS API, CLI, SDK. So we'll be using CLI. Click next. We will attach a policy instead of using a group. We'll attach here, and then we'll give them administrative access so that this person can have access to like maybe different accounts like S3. So click next. We don't have to worry about tagging, review, and we'll hit create. Once that is done, I would just copy this access key ID as well as a secret access code for us to use it later. Copy this, and then we'll close this out. After that, I will go and provision an EC2 instance. For that, I will type in EC2, and I'll hit EC2. I will go down here and I will launch an instance. We'll just pick up the first one, Linux 2. You can grab any of them up here. I'm just going to go with the first one. Click next. T2 micro, next. Over here, I will enable the public IP so that auto-assign public IP is enabled. When the instance launches, it has an IP address. General purpose, next, next. Security group, I'm just going to leave it the way it is SSH. Any traffic 00 should pass through. Click review, and I will hit launch. I'll create a new one. I would say K8 KP. Download the key pair. I will go to my download folder and I will save it for future use, and I would launch, and so the deployment has launched. View instance. So it started to launch. In the meantime, I'm just gonna K8 EC2, just Kubernetes. And it's starting to run. I'm going to use my personal tool that I do to log into any instance, so I think it works out really well for me. So I'm just going to use this tool. While it's still deploying, I'm just going to copy the public IP, go here, click session, hit telnet, put IP address, username is, I think I'm going to put EC2 user, and then I'm going to come up here and we'll load the PEM key, which is on my drive, and I will click OK. So here you go, I'm logged into my EC2 machine, and now I'm going to just make sure I alleviate the permissions here. One more thing I want to show you. So if I go back here and if I select this, I can hit connect, and I can use the process that I used was this one where I copied the IP and I used the user admin and then whatever. You can also use this command if you have a PuTTY and everything. You can just SSH into the terminal by using this command. Just need to make sure you have permission 400 kpkp pem, and this is going to be the example. So just open PuTTY and copy from here, paste everything, and then log in from there. All right, so we're just going to go back to my terminal. Over here we have the EC2 instance. Before we do that, I want to show you one more thing, so that I made some notes in terms of the link. So I'm going to show you guys the link as well. All right, guys, so I did copy I went to the website and got the links for you, the one that I showed you up here. These links, the ones that are to upgrade this is the whole process to do the deployment, and this one is to upgrade the CLI to version 2, and then obviously you got EKS CTL, this is the document, and KUBECTL CTL. That's the document. So everything is here. I copied the command from here. So installing, updating, uninstalling AWS CLI version 2. You can just use this command. It's just, I'm going to be using the same thing. For Linux 864-bit, just copy this one. And then once we get there, we'll install EKSCTL. We'll have the commands here. I'll probably leave the link in the description below for KUBECTL. Once we do that, then we're going to use commands for installing Amazon EKS Cluster. As always, for CLI, you're going to use this one. And then we'll go through the process. All right. So let's go back to our notes. We'll come here. Now, first thing first, we want to make sure that, you know, we are already logged into our EKS, well, to the, our, first, I want to check AWS version. So we have 1.18 for CLI. We want to upgrade to 2.0. So again, we're just going to go to that link and download the version 2.0. So if I go up here to my notes, I already made a shortcut. So I'll just copy this one to version 2.0 and we'll go here and we'll paste and then hit enter. Once we do that, it's going to download the file. So if I ls, it's going to, you can see that, you know, AWS CLI, CLI v2 zip file is. So what we're going to do is we're going to unzip the CLI file. So unzip AWS CLI v2.zip. Okay, well, copy this here and hit enter. So it's going to unzip all the file. Once that happens, I'm going to check where it did unzip. So it should be in bin, user bin, but I'm going to just check which, let me clear this here, which AWS, and it's going to show that, hey, it's unzipped it in user bin AWS. So I want to make sure that, you know, that is done. Next step is to update the version. So I'm going to use a command. Everything is in the link. So we'll log in as a root user, sudo AWS install bin directory into user bin install directory of CLI. So AWS install bin and directory, user bin, that is this one, install directory would be AWS CLI update. So whatever I unzipped in this folder, it will update this one in here. So if I hit enter, and now if I want to do AWS version, and now it is 2.0. So in the past, if I scroll back up before, so I did clear the screen, but anyway, so it did show up the AWS 2.1. Now this, we are on updated CLI. Now the next process is to install the configure. So let's say configure AWS. So this is a place where it's going to ask you the access ID. I believe I mentioned you, I'm going to copy those. So I'm going to just push it up from my notepad and I hit enter. It's going to ask me for access key. I have it here in the notepad. So just, I'm not remembering anything. Region, I would say, since we are in each one, US East -1. Output, I will do JSON, and then we are now in East US. Okay, so the next step would be to download KUBECTL as the document. I'm just going to go into KUBECTL, this one. Make sure we are in Linux, and this is the place where I think we're going to work on 16. So we want to copy this one here. We're just going to hit copy. Go back here. And then this is basically, it's curling, it's downloading kubectl from this location, version 16. And it's going to go into bin Linux 64 kubectl. Hit enter. It did download. So now once it download, we will give permission to this folder. So I would say chmod plus x user kubectl. Hit enter. It did give permission. Now what we're going to do is we're going to download the file from, first we'll create, so I'm going to just leave the document, the listing, all the document scripts on there. So I'm going to make a directory on the home bin, and then I will copy that directory into home kubectl and export the path of home. So hit enter. And now we're going to check the version of kubectl. kubectl version, short and client. And then we have a client version of 1.16 EKS and E163.11. Okay, perfect. The next step is to install EKSCTL. Come up here, and then we're going to go up here, EKSCTL. I think this is the one. So EKSCTL. So this is where we're going to go back here. Again, we want to make sure that we are using Linux, and we're going to use this commands, install and everything, and then we'll go from there. I had it copied, so I'm just going to copy it from my notes, and I will explain that in a second as well. Okay, curl silently. Location will be GitHub vwork. This is the network vwork. If you ever worked in Kubernetes, this is the add-on for network connectivity. Username AMD. This is a tar file, and it's going to copy it in the temp folder. Hit enter. It did downloaded the file. So if I ls, and you can see that there is a file that was downloaded, a tar file, into the temp folder. So if I go into temp, I'll see a folder, a file named AMD64tarz. Okay, the next step is to extract it to user bin. So for that, I'm just going to move this file first into the bin folder. And so if I say ls usr bin, you can, well, we just have to look for files. So if I go here, and so the file was EKSCTL. So if I grep, so you can see all the files. It's going to bring in, I guess that didn't work. So clear the screen out. ls. I just want to show you where it is. So let's do this. This is the file up here. So we're gonna just move this in there. So let's clear this out. we need to make a directory. And then we're going to check the version of 0.42. All right, so if I want to do EKSCTL help, it should give us all the commands that are required for EKSCTL. You can delete, create. This is the create deployment, delete the deployment, disassociate IPs, enable the service, enable the cluster. Everything is there. So utility version, which we did. So clear this out. So now what we're going to do is we will provision our EC2 cluster, EKS cluster, sorry. So for that, we just need to go in for that, we're just going to go and run the command for our cluster. It's going to be EKS cluster worker nodes. So everything is in there. So if I go in this document, cluster, CLI, want to make sure we have the copy command in here. So it's everything in there. I'll leave the link. I'll explain this. EKSCTL create cluster name dev version 1.16 region US East 1 node group name standard worker noder, that is the worker node, and then T3 micro. You can have T2 micro. Node is three nodes, 3 T3 micro, and then minimum 1 node, and then maximum can go up to 4 for load management. And this is a managed service. So I would hit enter. Now it's going to start creating deploying clusters. So it usually takes a good 15 minutes I mean, it's going to go through CloudFormation, and then it will create the cluster, EKS Kubernetes clusters, and then it will create node clusters. It will do different type of functions. So just take 15 minutes. In the meantime, I'm going to show you what's happening at the back end. So I would click here, and I would type in, I would go back to my notes, type in cloud formation, click here. So you can see it's running. It's saying waiting for CloudFormation stack. So it is creating a EKS cluster dev cluster, EKSCTL dev cluster. So there is a script that is running in the CloudFormation. So you can see it already have created a stack. So I click here. Go here. Stacks up here. It has already created a stack. Click here, and then you can see if you hit revent, you can see it started to create a logical ID, VPC initialized, and then now it is creating init function, and it is creating lambda function. And then if I click here, it created EKSCTL dev cluster, and then you can see it's just creating public IP, control pane, and then it's going to go through net gateway, control panel, so subnet provisioning, ingress nodes, policies, private subnet, VPN gateway. So it's going to take good, I would say 10-15 minutes. So while it does that, you can see it internet gateway, control panel secure, private IP, public route table, and then it will create a def parameter in the end. I'm going to pause the video, and I will return back in 15 minutes once this is deployed. All right, and also if I look at this clock, this is almost 5 o'clock, so it started 4:59. So we're just gonna watch the clock while it does the deployment. All right, guys. So if you can see the time, it's almost like 5:11 a.m. It's almost took 10 minutes. Now it's deploying our worker node, that is EKSCTL dev node group standard worker node. So now it created all the master node, that is the control panel. Now it's deploying the worker node. So once that is deployed, I can go back here, and if I refresh, now you can see in event, it has created EKSCTL dev node group standard 2 worker nodes. Worker node, I think we have defined 3 worker nodes, so it's going to create 3 worker nodes. So we're going to just wait for another couple of minutes. This doesn't take too much time. So far, it's almost like we started 49, 59. So it's almost like 13 minutes so far. All right, guys, so it took good 15 minutes, as you can see, to install the worker node and cluster. If I scroll back here and take a look at, so it started 57 cluster. So we hit the command, and then it went all the way to 15 minutes, almost 18 minutes to deploy the cluster worker node. Okay, so we're just going to go back here for a second, and then we'll go back to refresh it. You can see the CloudFormation have deployed all the stacks. Stack info, this is the stack ID. Let's go back to Amazon Elastic. Kubernetes service. Actually, let's do Elastic Kubernetes service. Here, up here, click here. So once I click here, so we are in Kubernetes. It tells you expose a Kubernetes API endpoint, which is what we're gonna do. So we come here to cluster, and then we can see we have remember we gave a name of that cluster to dev, and then once we get to the dev, we can see the configuration, and then once we get to configuration, it has all the detail. This is the endpoint. Compute, we have 3 worker nodes that we defined in our command. So if I get here and if I look here, we have given 3 nodes, minimum 1 and 4, which we'll use it for load balancer. Go back here. In networking, it used the subnets, security group, VPC 10.116. Public openly, authentication, we will logging, disabled. So that's good. And this says Kubernetes version 1.16, EKS 6. So these are all the details. Now we're going to go into logging into our Kubernetes cluster control panel. I'll clear this out. I'm going to exit. So I exited out from Kubernetes cluster. Go back here. Go back to my EC2. I want to show you something else with that. Once I come here, and you can see now we have one that is the master one that is running, the K8 EC2, and then we got 2 standard worker nodes that are running in there. So again, we're gonna log in to connect. We can use the same thing. I'll copy this as an EC2 user and go back here. Again, I have the IP address already, but I can just do and I would say EKSCTL get cluster. You can see that we have a dev cluster name East1, and it is true. So if I clear this and EKSCTL get cluster, you can see there is a cluster that is running under name of dev in use East1. So that means that your Elastic Kubernetes service in AWS is running. So let's do one more thing. So let's do update on these cluster. So I'm going to do AWS EKS update kubeconfig name dev, and then it's in region 1. And I updated it. Perfect. Let's say if I want to do EKSCTL get nodes. It's not in here. So what we're going to do is we're going to install sudo, I would say yum install git. Clear. And then we'll do a clone of a repo from you have it. I have it on my repository as well. And then I would clear this out. I would cd. I would do ls first, and then cd course basic. Hit enter, and then I would try to ls again, and there's two files. One is an nginx file that will do deployment, and the service file. So let's do if I do want a cat and it's going to tell you that, hey, we are doing a deployment, name nginx deployment, a name involved in the environment is dev, three replica set, and then we're going to do a container, and it has an image of nginx, and that nginx will be running on 80. And if I clear this, and ls, and then I cat service, it tells you that, hey, we have a service, nginx service, load balancer, port 80, environment dev. Clear this out, and then what we'll do is we'll apply, so kubectl apply -f nginx service first, and then we have a service created. So if I do kubectl get all, you can see there is a service open. First, if I didn't do the service it would just show up this one. But right now I ran that YML file and I showed you what that is. Then next step is kubectl apply -f, and then nginx -deployment .yaml. So if I do that, it has created an deployment as well. So if I clear this out and I do kubectl get all, I will explain this. This is in many of my videos as well. So I have used a YML file of deployment, nginx deployment. I showed you the cat file. It has 3 replica set. 3 of them are up to date, and 3 of them are available, 12-second age. And then it has a replica set, which I said 3. It's up here. It says 3 current is 3 and ready. I have a pod running inside a container, which is Nginx deployment pod. You can log into these these containers and like pod and do more work in it. But for now, you have an Nginx image that is running onto these these pods. So there are a few commands. So kubectl get pods. It's going to show up these three things. Again, it says that these are the pods that are running, and this is ready. And then I would let me clear this so it's easier. kubectl get nodes. These are the 3 nodes that we created. So you can see these are 3 created nodes. That is the machine that we have up here. So if I click here, you can see these are the 3 nodes that are running dev standard. So I minimize this. These are the same thing. Okay, and then kubectl get nodes minus OY, that is output in a wider version, which has IP and everything. You can see that these are the IP addresses that are given to each pods. It says that it has an Amazon Linux 2, and the container image has Nginx. So the next thing what we need to do is we need to see what are the, so let's do one more thing. I'm going to just test it out. So it doesn't have Docker. Okay, that's good. It doesn't have Docker anyways. So again, clear this out. Docker kubectl get all. So it gives me this endpoint of Amazon. I'll copy this. So this endpoint is basically a container and load balancer that is going to pull up all the images in these container with port. These containers, these pods are running on this port 80. And then the external port is 32076, which is a TCP port. And this external load balancer endpoint, I'll copy this. I already did. I'm going to come here, go back to a new window, and I would put this and hit enter. There you go. So this is an image that is loaded into an Nginx. This is using load balancer. So again, one more thing. What we did was we downloaded the image. So first thing what we did was we installed EKS, Elastic Kubernetes service for Amazon. We installed Kubernetes kubectl, and then we deployed an image, Nginx image through deployment YML file. Very easy. And that YML file created 3 pods, and it actually installed Nginx image on these pods. So if I do this, kubectl get pods minus OY as well probably will work. So you can see that these pods have IP addresses. This is internal IP addresses, and these are internal nodes IP addresses. So these IP addresses are being joined by this load balancer, and this load balancer has an external IP address, which is also, so if I do this kubectl get nodes minus OY, that is output in a wider, so you can see that each of these machines, these IP addresses are external. So if I do copy this and paste it on the browser and do 80 or port 3207, it should pull up that Nginx. So each container, each machine has a pod, and pod is running on those images running on that container. Anyway, so I'm going to clear this out. I'm going to show you before I close this lab here. So I would say kubectl get all. So let's say if I have a 3 replica set, I want to scale this, manually scaling. We're not using load balancer or any other service, but right now say kubectl scale deployment, and the deployment name is Nginx, and then I would say replica equal to 25. So once I hit that, hopefully it won't break. something is happening. I didn't hit enter. So now 25 pods going to be kubectl get pods minus o void. Now you can see some of them are running, which are older one. Now it's pending. So it's going to start deploying. It would deploy pods on those 3 machines. You can see the IP addresses are different. 146, 17, 46. So slowly it's going to start deploying those Nginx images on these pods, and this is going to start running. This is obviously very slow, but if you are running in like a bigger environment, there are billions of pods that are running, so images loads up really fast. So I'm just going to wait till it to load up. In the meantime, if I do clear and kubectl get, oh, actually, let's do this. Watch minus o void. You can see this is still pending. So, you know, it's just running those pods inside those containers. So on those images. All right. So you can see this is still working. This is basically watching any changes. Control C, clear, get all. You can see all these images are being deployed into these containers. So eventually this is going to be all running. It probably is because I have never used AWS before, so but it does take like really quick to get those deployment. Anyways, so if I do kubectl delete, or let's do this, kubectl and then I would change it to 5. I would hit enter, and then it's the deployment stopped, and then it went to, it's going to start terminating. You can see it just deleted automatically. One is still pending because it's being made. Again, deployment, you can change the number to 2. You can see the 2 are terminating. Anyway, so that's about it. Delete. So if I do one more thing, so kubectl get all, and then I would say kubectl delete deployment, and I would copy this deployment. It will delete everything that I just created. Hit enter and clear kubectl get all. Now you can see it's going to start, it's starting terminating the deployment. I can delete this load balancer as well eventually. So alright guys, one more thing that I wanted to show you, that since we already have deployed a container here, so if I clear this out and kubectl get all, so it's showing up that there are 3 pods that are running, right? So let's go about, so high availability thing that I wanted to show you. So let's say if I want to go here and let's say I want to stop these. So I would stop first. So if I stop this, I think that should come up in a second here. So see, if you look at this, I stopped this and now it says not ready. So if I go back, so it definitely should go back and creating another one, but and then all the work has been moved to one node, so not ready. So if I clear this and kubectl get pods minus override, you can see only one. Everything is it's pending, and the rest is just running. So it moved everything into one container because we just have one machine that is running. Anyways, so let's say if I want to go back here and start them, and once I start these, it should definitely. So if you notice that we had 3 of them, so once I stopped this was starting to initialize. So this is high availability. You can see the zone is 1F. First one are deployed 1B, 1F, and then 1D, 1D. So now it's because of the high availability architecture, it's just initialized another one. So now if I go back and run the command, it should show that these will eventually come back. So let's say kubectl get pods, get nodes minus override. Sorry. Get nodes minus kubectl. So you can see now the nodes are starting to come back up. Scheduling disabled because we turned off that machine. Anyways, that will be it for high availability. If I refresh it, this should start deleting because maximum we said so you can see now it's initializing because we had 4 of them maximum. So you know it's gonna work that way. So that's about it. Once again, let's go to our notes quickly. Again, we have created an admin that has admin ID, user ID, deployed EC2 machine, installed updated CLI, installed command line tool for EKS, and then Kubernetes EKS command line tool. Again, we deployed clusters. We deployed EKS cluster that had a control panel, and then we gave them a 3 worker node. And once we did the 3 worker node, we also did a YML file for deployment. That deployment actually created 3 pod because we defined a 3 pod. And then we use load balance service to view these pods through Nginx images. Same thing here, pretty much the same thing. Worker node, it would go into the different availability zone. This is a higher available architecture. That's about it. I hope you liked and enjoyed the video. If you liked it, please comment or hit that like button. Until next time, have yourself a great day. Thank you.